Hi everybody, this is Jen from Cookies, Cupcakes, and Cardio.com. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make this giant Peeps cake, and it has a surprise inside, a whole bunch of other Peeps. Let's get started. To make the giant Peeps cake, we're going to be using yellow sanding sugar. We're going to be using lots of different Peeps. Now I went to the store and I just got all the different colors and flavors that I could find. We're going to be using two different batches of cake. Now, one batter batch I used to bake a round cake, and the other one I baked in a 9x13, and I'll tell you a bit more about what to bake and how to bake that with the cakes later on. We're going to be using toothpicks to do some securing and whatnot, and we're going to be using two brown Smarties, we call them in Canada. Now these are just chocolate or candy covered chocolates. You can use anything similar that you have available for you. And we're going to be using a batch of our marshmallow buttercream, which I have colored yellow. So I just want to give you a little bit more information about what you need to do when you're baking the cake. So I used my vanilla cake recipe for when I baked both of these cakes. Now, one full batch fits into a standard 9x13 rectangle pan, and I used, with my batter, it took about 35 to 40 minutes to bake completely. Now, another batch of my batter went into this 3-quart bowl. Now, whenever you have a cake and it's going to be really deep, I find that it's a lot easier to help bake the cake thorough, like right through the center, without having any raw parts in the middle by using a heating core. So I just used a heating core in order to help bake this cake. And even with that heating core helping bake, it still took about 70 to 80 minutes, and they both were at 350 degrees. So this one takes quite a while, so don't be worried if it's over an hour and it's still not baked. That's quite normal. And you'll see when I start to carve the cakes that there will be a hole in the center where the heating core was. So let's start assembling the cake. So I have my rectangle cake here on a cake board. I'm just going to flip my round cake here upside down onto the top. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make 4 cuts. Now I'm just lining my knife up right so it's flush with the round cake. And I'm just going to use a serrated knife and cut off each of the corners. So to cut off all the rest of the corners, I'm just going to line this one up and then line them all up so that all of the pieces are the same size. When you've cut your 4 corner pieces off, make sure that you don't throw them away. We're going to be using them coming up. The next thing to do is that I want to mark the placement of the top of the round cake here, just using toothpicks. So I'm just going and lining them up just along the edge of where the bowl meets the rectangle cake. I'm just going to go all the way around, and then I'll just take it off so I can show you. So I'm just going to take it off, and then when it's gone, we'll have a little mark here left over where the middle of the cake will be. Now that I have the outside of the upper part of the cake marked out with my toothpicks, I'm going to go in about 1 inch, and I'm just carving out a little space here that's just going to make the hidden Peeps that are on the inside just a little bit, gives them a little bit more space for them to kind of hang out there. So I'm just made that initial guideline, and now I'm just going to peel out the chunk of the cake in here. You can go as deep as you want to. I'm not going to go right to the bottom. I'm going to leave a little bit of cake at the bottom there too. And so I'm just going to continue this, and then when I've got it all peeled out, I'll show you the next step. So now I'm going to carve out the middle of the top of the cake. So this is the bowl portion of it. And again, I'm going to stay about 1 inch away from the edge and just repeat the exact same process that I did below. And this is when having the heating core kind of comes in handy, because you don't have to carve out as much as as it's baked in here. It's quite thick. So this stuff that you're carving out of the top and out of the bottom, these pieces you don't need to save for any part of the cake, but you might want to save them for making cake pops or little cake truffles. There's lots of uses that you can, rather than throwing the cake pieces away when they're perfectly usable, there's lots of things you can use them for. So I'm just going to continue working away at this. Now you want to make sure you don't make your edges too thin, or when you start to move it around, you might find that it starts to break. So that's just my only piece of advice for digging this part out. So now that we have both of the cakes hollowed out, we're going to put the Peeps in. So you just want to put in as many as you can. Get them all in here. We'll just go around and squish them in so they're nice and tight. And use lots of different colors if that's what you're choosing to do. So they're all in there, pretty tight like that for the top. And then into the one here, I want these ones upside down, so when we cut open the cake, they'll be the right way up. Putting these ones in. So I'm just going to continue to build this one up here, and then I'll show you how to get this flipped up over onto the top of this one. So both of our hollowed out parts are filled with Peeps. So I'm going to take my yellow buttercream and I'm just going to put a little bit of a ring around the bottom here. Now what this is going to do is it's going to act as the glue to hold the top of the bowl cake onto the bottom here. So once you've got the buttercream like that, I'm just using a cake lifter and I'm just placing it on top of that cake and I'm flipping it over and sliding the cake on top just like that. So I'm taking one of the corners that we cut off in the beginning and placing it on the front of the what is now the head of the Peep, and I'm just going to attach it with some toothpicks, and you want to put a couple in there because you want it to be quite stable because you're going to be icing the beak, so you don't want it to fall off or break off. I'm just going to do that, and then we'll work on the tail next. So I'm using 2 of the corner pieces for the tail, and again the toothpicks, just poking them in here, holding the tail steady when we're doing our buttercream over top of it. Just like that, and I'll put 2 more on this side just for good measure. Now that I have my Peep together, I'm going to do a crumb coat, and what a crumb coat does is exactly how it sounds, is it just catches all the crumbs that, especially because this is a cake that we've been cutting and we've moved around a lot, and so we just want to make sure that we get all the crumbs caught in this first layer so there's none in our final product. After the crumb coat has been applied, what I did was I just popped it into the freezer for about 20 minutes, and what that does is it just sets the coat so that you can go about putting on the final layer and not having to worry about catching any of those crumbs. So I'm just going to go over one more time and then get set up to put on the sanding sugar. You may have seen me apply sprinkles to some other cakes using this technique, but in case you haven't seen it, what I've got underneath my cake on my turntable is just a large, one of my big huge cake pans, and that just catches all of these sprinkles, and then I just take the sprinkles into my hand and just gently roll them up the side of the cake. So I'm going to cover the whole Peeps cake just like this, and it won't make a humongous mess all over your kitchen because it gets caught in the cake pan. So the last step to decorating our giant Peep is to take some just buttercream on the back of the Smartie and then just put the Smartie into place for the Peep's eye. And we'll do that again on the other side. So here's a completed shot of the giant Peep cake. I wanted to make sure I showed you what it looked like finished because for our next shot, I'm going to have it cut open so you can see the surprise inside. So there you go, everybody, how to make a giant Peep cakes with a surprise inside. So I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did. I love that the Peeps are all poking on out and coming out of the cake here. I think it'd be a great one for any sort of Easter party that you might be headed to. So thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe to the channel, and you can find all of our social media sites in the description box below the video. Thanks for watching. See you next time.